Hi, this is Paul Humber, and I am speaking to you, introducing this video on May the 1st, 2016. And it relates to an assembly I gave at the Haverford School almost 32 years ago. The Haverford School is non-sectarian, which means neither teachers nor students must subscribe to a particular belief system. This assembly was called Hanukkah and Christmas. On December the 3rd, 1984, I taught for a total of 24 years at the Haverford School and also coached pole vaulting. In the assembly, I explained the meaning both of Hanukkah, a Jewish holiday, and Christmas, a Christian holiday. Mr. Davis, our Parker, pictured on the left there, was the headmaster at the time. I think I served under 4 headmasters. The students seemed appreciative of being informed and applauded the assembly at the end. Mr. Donald Brownlow, you can see his famous football cannon there to the lower right, was a friendly colleague of mine. We interacted and conversed often, and he even had me come into a history class and speak to the students and so on. Many students later, after 1984, they became involved with my stove project. Started in about 1988 and lasted until about 2001. And it reached out to help international boys from such places as Brazil, China, India, Niger, and Zambia. Now, you see on the right there a picture of an overhead projector. In 1984, that was the way to project images onto a screen. And some of these images that I'm using, for example, that calligraphy Hanukkah and the Hebrew words on the bottom, they were prepared for that presentation. But I also am including other images, more than I had used back there in 1984. Again, this is the year 2016. When I play the audio tape, it's not a videotape, it's an audio tape, there will be some pauses at times. Don't be bothered by that, because I was maybe putting on a new image on the overhead projector and so on. This took place in Centennial Hall at the Haverford School. So let's begin the assembly. And it's just about ready to come on. I've pushed the play button. There are 2 important celebrations being observed later on this month, and I think it's important for us to consider again their meaning and significance. The first one is Hanukkah. If you were given an opportunity this morning, if I were to distribute paper and so on, and ask you to put down in black and white what is the significance of Hanukkah, I suspect that many of you would be at a loss what to say. The word Hanukkah is a Hebrew word, and it means dedication. The question that you want to ask yourself is, what was dedicated? This is an etching, an old one, and it's about as good a job I could do given the circumstances and so on. This is an etching of the city of Jerusalem. Prominent in the center of this projection is the Dome of the Rock, or the Mosque of Omar, which is presently situated on the site where Herod's temple and earlier temples stood.
true worship of the Lord God had returned to Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity of the people of God into exile, and the temple had been rebuilt. Solomon's temple had been destroyed. But in 168 BC, the king of Syria, Antiochus Epiphanes by name, after an unsuccessful attempt to capture Alexandria, entered Jerusalem to vent his wrath on the Jews. He entered on the Sabbath and killed people left and right. He wanted to eradicate the true religion of God's people. He ordered sacrifices to stop. And toward the end of December 168 BC, he had a pig, an unclean animal, sacrificed on an altar before the temple. He consecrated the whole area to the god Zeus. The biblical book of Daniel prophesied this desecration in chapters 8 and 11. 3 years later, on the 25th of December, 165 BC, a man named Judas Maccabeus, a valiant Jewish warrior, together with a band of followers, captured the temple and rededicated the altar again to the Lord God. There's that word, dedication, Hanukkah. Daniel seems also to have prophesied this deliverance in the book chapter 11. The significance of Hanukkah, therefore, is that it celebrates the restoration of the true worship of God. It is interesting also that Hanukkah is referred to in the New Testament in the 10th chapter of the Gospel according to John, where we read, "At that time, the feast of the dedication," and that's what the word Hanukkah means, took place at Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon. The second important celebration that we observe later on in a few weeks is Christmas. And just as the word Hanukkah has origin in Hebrew, the word Christmas has its origin in the Greek word Christos, Christ, and meaning anointed or the anointed one. Contrary to the misconceptions of many, the term is not Jesus' second name. It is a title meaning anointed and is used at various points in the Old Testament. It is equivalent to the Hebrew term Mashiach, which also means anointed. Jews before the birth of Jesus anticipated the coming of a great deliverer, and many Jews of the first century believed that Jesus was the Messiah. Genesis 3:15 spoke of one who would be born of a woman, though this one would be himself wounded by Satan, he himself would overthrow Satan. God is the speaker, and he says in verse 15, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman." There had been no enmity. She went right along with Satan's temptation. But God says that he sovereignly will put enmity between the woman and between Satan, and between her seed and your seed, or Satan's seed. He the seed of the woman, would bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Micah, in the 8th century BC, writing hundreds of years before the birth of Jesus, spoke of one who would come from Bethlehem, whose goings forth are from the days of eternity. But as for you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. His goings forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. The significance of Christmas is that according to Christian beliefs, God entered the world. Christians believe that Jesus fulfilled Isaiah's prophecy written hundreds of years before his birth. These words perhaps are familiar to some of you who have sung Handel's Messiah. For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness. From then on and forevermore, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. You can see testimony of some of these beliefs in Charles Wesley's famous hymn, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. The title, again, Christ, is used. Notice the statement in the first stanza, Christ is born in Bethlehem. This was in fulfillment of Micah's prophecy. And then in the second stanza, he's referred to as the everlasting Lord. Again, reminds us of the prophecy in Micah. And the concept that Jesus is God in human flesh is also expressed in this hymn, this carol that we are all familiar with. Those of you that like to receive copies of this little presentation, I have prepared some, and you're welcome to ask for it. Seniors, dismissed.